Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla Apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC. We are the crown jewel of Talk AM radio, and I do urge you to go immediately to the App Store on your cell phone and download the 77 WABC app so you won't miss incredible interviews like the one we're about to have. Sean Stone is a writer, a poet, a scholar, a movie producer and director, and an all-around Renaissance man. We've been friends for a number of years, even though we started in different political positions. He is a civil libertarian, a true believer of freedom. I was privileged to be on his TV show, Conspiracy Theory, also Buzzsaw, years ago. We've been friends since, and I am pleased to have him on the Roger Stone Show today. Sean, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. It's great to connect here.
You are a very accomplished individual. You studied American history at Princeton and Oxford. You wrote your senior thesis on the modern history of the New World Order, a matter of great interest to me. You're peripatetic. You're always working on a dozen impressive projects. But tell me where you think America is today. Where are we headed? And can we, between right and left, can we forge a majority of Americans around the concept of common sense and basic freedom?
I think common sense is really the important phrase there. I remember we really slipped into an insanity in 2020. I think it was great to see a lot of people waking up. They called that the Great Awakening. And so for me, I was very inspired these last few years, believe it or not, even though we've seen, as you know, such extremes of government overreach and this, attempt to basically create what they literally call the New World Order. Build back better is one aspect of it. The Great Reset is another aspect. But the fundamental agenda of more and more international controls, even beyond the federal government, as though the federal government is not enough. That's been an agenda in the works for a long time, and yet we've seen a great shift in awareness where people are more openly talking about conspiracies, and I love it. I mean, this, having been an operative your whole life, and having done work around conspiracy theories and research and things like this. People are talking more openly than ever before, right? And I think that's a great inspiration. To me, that's inspiring, because if we don't have that dialogue, if we're not able to wake people up using the tools of social media, the internet, then we basically will see a totalitarian future. But I'm still optimistic.
Yeah, I think that people's basic distrust of government, which should have started in 1963 but did not, most Americans very sadly accepted the flawed conclusions of the Warren Commission. That would unravel later, very much thanks to your father, celebrated movie producer, director Oliver Stone. But really with the Vietnam War, I think the Vietnam War is the real beginning of Americans beginning to figure out, well, the government doesn't always tell you the truth. And then you can see the trajectory from there. The war in Iraq, another example of the government not telling us the truth. The Russian collusion hoax, another example of the government not telling us the truth. I think 2016, from an electoral watershed point of view, is the first election in my lifetime in which the voters are as distrustful of the media as they are of both major parties and all politicians and all other political institutions. We really have, despite an effort by the mainstream media to prop up a series of false narratives, I trust the American people. They really have figured things out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, 2016 was a watershed. I was shocked that Trump actually won. Not totally shocked. I guess in some ways it made sense, but I was still surprised because I thought it was such a shoo-in for Hillary to just kind of continue this idea, right? I was glad that wasn't Jeb versus Hillary. First of all, I was happy to see Trump win, but I was actually, again, I was surprised that he was allowed to win, because I'd seen the nature of how these things seem to be at some levels rigged. If not, the elections have obviously been influenced. I mean, we know that going back to even before Kennedy and Nixon in 1960. I mean, this is a long history of elections that can be considered dubious, right, in America. So I was very skeptical that they would allow Trump to win. I was surprised. I was happy to see it in 2016. I thought it was encouraging because it was, as you said, a shift in the overall response to what they called the deplorables, but really it was the Rust Belt, it was the working class Americans, it was middle class America, it was what they called, it was the revolt of the anti-intellectuals. I mean, and I can't stand the intellectual establishment. So whenever they get riled up, right, about the people actually having a voice and having having a response to something that is personal to them. Obviously, the American people are responding to economic conditions, government overreach, you name it, immigration, all these factors that we're seeing again now playing out as they were in 2016, as they were in 2020. In fact, it's just that, it was COVID that shut down everything so that we couldn't even have a fair election. And obviously, COVID was much more than probably a bioweapon and so many different government factors, different agencies involved with that, as we know. But the point is that, yes, I was very encouraged from 2016 on that the American people are waking up, trying to take the government back, in a sense, more limited government. That's what Trump seems to be running on. And I think that's the common denominator between you and I. I'm someone that goes back to the Constitution. I'm like, if we can agree on something, it's, between Democrats and Republicans, and I mean the conservative side of them being, we want a more limited government. The left has taken over the Democratic Party. They've gone to the place of, we want a total government to basically pay for everything, to have control over everything, and you name it. It's like, that's not, to me, the constitutional republic of the United States. That the Constitution is very clear in a limited federal role in our lives.
Yeah, I'd say two things. First of all, 2016 was unique in that I think the political establishment underestimated Donald Trump twice. First of all, they underestimated him in the nomination phrase. They saw him as a caricature, a cartoon character from New York, a most improbable candidate. He beat 16 better funded and more experienced politicians for the Republican nomination. And then, of course, Hillary Clinton had gotten what she wished for. She wanted to run against Donald Trump, but just the way Hamilton Jordan, Jimmy Carter's chief of staff, wrote in his biography, "Oh, God, we want to run against Ronald Reagan. He would be so easy to beat." Wrong on both cases. So I think they underestimated him. They didn't have their plan in place. We had the closest thing to an honest election we've had in decades, and Trump was elected in an upset. Also, it's fair to say that in those closing 3 days of that campaign, Hillary repaired to Chappaqua to begin reviewing the fabric swatches for the curtains in the Oval Office where she was intended to go. Her campaign paid for an enormous fireworks display for New York Harbor that was to be used the night she was elected. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was barnstorming Wisconsin, Detroit, Michigan, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Detroit, Michigan, Philadelphia, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Phoenix, Arizona, Atlanta, Georgia, and then doing the cycle all over again. You know, the FAA has a rule that a pilot can only fly so many hours before they're required to rest, before they can fly again. Trump was burning through pilots. In other words, as soon as his pilots reached the mandatory time when they could not fly, he would bring in 2 more qualified pilots and keep going. He was literally surviving on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, driven by adrenaline, barnstorming these Democratic strongholds, where he did incrementally better than Mitt Romney 4 years previously, and that is what handed him victory. So if you look, for example, at Detroit, where in the inner city, in the African-American precincts, he ran 3% better, 3.5% better than Mitt Romney, but that's 85,000 votes, and he only carried Michigan by 65,000 votes. So I think it was a one-time phenomena. Where do you think, Sean, we are headed now? In other words, we're going to a watershed election. You see this tsunami of lawfare against the president, which is designed to drain his money, drain his time, and obviously to further blacken his name. I really am too close to this personally to be objective about it. I personally think it's backfiring badly, but I'm interested in your view as a more dispassionate observer.
I mean, it's hard to be dispassionate because I feel I'm obviously not as invested as you are, but I should say in a different way I'm invested, right? I think all Americans are invested. I think Americans should be invested in what's going on because it's become personal. You know, politics, I would say politics has become more personal than ever. During the Trump years, I really actually wasn't paying much attention to politics because I felt that we had someone competent running the executive branch, right? Which is to say Trump was as being not a deep state creature, but someone with an executive mind, a businessman, the kind of person that you actually want to run the business that is the United States. Since 2020, thing we saw with COVID, I think politics became very personal for all of us, right? As I said at the beginning, I mean, the fact that the government could come in and shut down your business, could try to tell you to walk around with a mask, could try to force you to get vaccinated. All of these factors became very scary for us. And I think, they should, rightly so. We need to be aware of such of government overreach, and it hasn't stopped since then, as you know. I mean, the consequences of a government policy where the border is open, allowing, I've actually heard upward of 20 to 30 million illegals entering in the last few years. But whatever it is, it's over 10 million, many of whom they say are, potentially fighting age, potentially used for these kind of stay behind army type, operations, cartels certainly connected, potentially terrorist group connected. Very, very scary situation with what's being brought to America, because we know there's an intention to divide us, to create a civil war, to create such deep division where two people can't even have a sensible argument about things, because the reaction is when you say the word Trump, this Trump derangement syndrome is real. People really, you can't say to someone, hey, give me, what don't you like about Trump? They go crazy. They have nothing. It's just he's a criminal. He's a racist. He's this. Like, there's no ability to articulate a conversation, to actually have a discussion or sane dialogue. So we're in a position where the people are ready to vote for a guy who literally stands on stage and goes, 4 more years, pause, and doesn't even know that he's making a mistake. I mean, if he was coherent, Roger, you know this, you'd go 4 more years, pause, oh, haha, I read the teleprompter. He just stares at it. He doesn't know. That's not how can you, with a sane person, vote for someone who doesn't have the coherence to realize they're just reading from a teleprompter with no recognition of what they're saying?
Folks,
That's what's, right? They're so lost. in this current situation where they hate Trump so much that they can't actually see what's happening to their country and recognize that, hey, our country is more important than your personal animus to this guy.
Yeah, it is truly Trump derangement syndrome. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Sean Stone, who is a writer, a poet, a scholar, a movie director and producer, and a true Renaissance man. Like me, he's had a political odyssey. I used to be a traditional, hardcore, establishment conservative Republican. Today, I consider myself more of a libertarian Republican. The Republican Party is, sadly, even though I have a sentimental attachment to it, it's really just a vehicle for the election of good men and women who share your ideas. I'm not optimistic because of the barriers that we'll ever have a third party. We are a two-party nation, and our laws, written by Republicans and Democrats working together to make competition more difficult, really have set it up in that way. I do have to ask you, this interview is not about your famous father, who I admire very much. I don't like his politics, but I love his filmmaking. And we talked about this the other day. JFK is a great film, just a great film. Yeah. Nixon is a great film. The first time I saw it, I did not like it. The Nixon family, the Nixon daughters, who are friends of mine, reacted very negatively to it. The more I saw it subsequently, and I liked it more. I do have to say, W, on which you worked as an editorial consultant, I think that actually could be Oliver Stone's greatest film, only because it is absolutely, positively, historically, completely accurate. And it tells, in essence, the story about how Vice President Dick Cheney was the de facto president during the Bush years, and how he led us into a war in Iraq where we had no national interests whatsoever. An amazing film. What would you say? What would you say your favorite is?
Well, just on the W note, I really pushed my dad to make sure that he got into that aspect, the geopolitical factors, the heartland. What was it called? I'm blanking on the specific terminology, but it goes back to the British Empire, right? And the idea of like controlling the heartland, which is really, as you know, the Eurasia, the continent, as Brzezinski kind of picked up on this from the British years ago, but Brzezinski carried this forward, and Cheney and the neocons understood this. If, like, you look at Eurasia, that's the majority of the population of the planet, the world's grain, natural resources, energy, everything. So the British always wanted to fight Russia and basically keep Russia in conflict with its neighbors, right? Particularly China, India, Germany, right? That was very much a British policy. And the underbelly of Russia is Central Asia, right, which is all about Afghanistan and all these, all the different stands into the Middle East, obviously. And so my dad articulated that to some extent through the Cheney speech in the film, right? And this idea of really getting, not even necessarily having control of the oil, but just oftentimes just keeping Russia and China from accessing it, right? Or keeping the divisions in such a way with the gas pipelines, as you know. And this gets even into the Ukraine conflict, right? Keeping gas pipelines from going, from Russian gas going to Ukraine. It has to be, from other sources. Even in Israel, gas pipelines are another issue, bringing gas, whether it goes through Turkey or through Greece. There's always these issues of energy factors. As you know, energy runs the planet. So I think my dad was very good to articulate some of these ideas through the Cheney character in the Bush film. And as far as my personal favorites, I did love JFK the most because I think it's a fascinating mystery. But Nixon is a beautifully done film, very Shakespearean in terms of the drama. I think you appreciate Nixon in a way that a lot of people didn't in America, and actually was more sympathetic, as you know. That's why it didn't do any business. It didn't open very well, and also W didn't do any business because it also, I think, in some ways was sympathetic to Bush, but also showing him for the flawed person that he was. So it didn't really no side was happy with it, right? Because the Democrats didn't lambast him, make him look completely ridiculous. And for the Republicans, obviously, it didn't praise him. So it kind of fell in between. But I think all the films are great in their own way.
Well, what I learned just from writing books about it is people continue to be and will always be interested in the Kennedy assassination because it's a murder mystery. And in many of their minds, it's an unsolved murder mystery. The question of Richard Nixon and Watergate, that's a decided question. He was a very bad guy, and he led it to a constitutional convention. I don't agree with that view at all, of course, but that is kind of the settled cultural wisdom, and equally true of George W. Bush, who goes down as one of our least popular presidents. Folks, if you're just tuning in, I'm interviewing Sean Stone, writer, poet, scholar, filmmaker, Renaissance man, and we'll be right back after this commercial message.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back, folks. This is the Roger Stone Show at 77 WABC Radio on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. And we're speaking with Sean Stone, who is a Renaissance man, a poet, a writer, a scholar, a film producer and director. It's interesting that some of his poetry was recently turned into an album, which you can hear on iTunes and Spotify. It's called Alien Spirit, featuring the music of Michelle Huen. I hope I got that right. The first time I met you, Sean, I said, wow, this guy should run for public office. This guy should run for the U.S. Senate because you're tall, you're handsome, you're extremely articulate, you know exactly what you believe, you seem honest to me. We came from different points of view. I think we've seen a trend in the country where those on the right and those on the left who actually believe in civil liberties and freedom and who don't like war, and yes, there are many, are beginning more and more to meet in the middle. I mean, you've had a complete juxtaposition in the party. So the Democratic Party used to be the party of anti-war, used to be the party of civil liberties. They hated the FBI because of the FBI's surveillance on the anti-war groups during the Vietnam War. They were they were pro-big government. They were certainly pro-civil liberties. Now you have a complete juxtaposition. And I should say, at the time, Republicans tended to be more pro-war, tended to be in favor of a strong FBI. They seem to have completely switched sides. I'm not sure that you can put people in clear ideological boxes anymore. So I guess two-part question. One, would you ever consider running for office? And if so, I'll send you a contract immediately because I think you'd be great. But secondarily, this odyssey that I think we both experienced to a certain extent could create, perhaps, hopefully, a new majority somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
So, to answer your question, would I consider public office? Maybe one day. I feel like, as you know, it's so crooked, it's so corrupt. Look at what Trump has gone through. Is it really something that I would want to go through? I don't even know that I would have the influence and the effect. Being in a public position that I could potentially have. I believe in doing things in media. I really believe in the psycho-spiritual war. I think we need more voices in media that are helping to raise consciousness, to shift the narrative. And it's already, as you know, it's already taking place, and there are great people out there doing it. But again, we need more of that. We need a total shift away from the Hollywood-controlled infrastructure and paradigm about stories and the truth, and trying to control the truth with their narratives. And now it's gone to like a woke agenda and all this. And it's like, okay, we need the alternative voices, and it's happening, and I want to be part of that. So right now I feel very much called to the media space, because I think there's just as much importance, as you know, because that's education too, right? When media tells you, repeats something and lies consistently, it shapes the entire narrative. So that kind of answers to also why we've seen this great shift, as you mentioned, the Democrat Party, which I can't really say if I think back, like, were they really anti-war? Yeah, I mean, LBJ started Vietnam. Wilson went into World War One. Roosevelt went into World War Two. Democrats have been involved, and Clinton went into Serbia. So it's like, or I should say, the Kosovo War, and bombed Serbia. So I can't really. And as we know, Obama was totally pro-war. I think it shifted though with Obama, because at that point, that's when you saw this glorification of, oh shoot, Obama's doing the same things that Bush is doing as far as surveillance and droning and
bombing
power. Yeah, exactly. But also like the overreach of executive power with Obama, right? Going after using the IRS to target people, and so many more abuses. And it was like, oh wow, we actually like this now. The Democrats are like, wait, we can use the government to do what we want and go after our enemies. And I think there was that shift, that tonal shift that took place under Obama. You could say it started to a certain extent with the Clintons, and they obviously, as you know in your book, you've done a great book on Clinton's War on Women, which I've been reading, and they targeted their enemies. But Obama took it, I think, to a Nixonian level, and I think the left kind of embraced it at that point. Said, oh great, we can use the government for to do what we want and get it back at our enemies and control the narrative and all this. So. It's been a real shift, and that's why I say I'm hesitant to do anything myself with public office at this point. But I do believe in shifting our narrative, and that's what we need right now. We need more voices to help educate people to what's really going on, so they can stop, so they can realize how to think clearly. Once you know how to think, as you know, you look at the news and you realize, oh, they're lying to me, they're deceiving me. I learned that at a young age because I was involved with JFK and my dad's projects, Nixon and stuff. So I got a chance to say, okay, I know the news is manipulative. Most people don't know that until recently. I think finally, as you said, the last few years it shifted. We need more voices to help educate people.
Very, very well put. Well, never say never, but one can certainly understand your hesitations about running for public office. People who run for public office and who are honest very often get destroyed. It's like my friend Tucker Carlson. People said, well, Tucker Carlson for vice president. Look, I love Tucker Carlson, but he has more influence where he is right now than he could ever have as vice president of the United States. Plus, even though he does suffer fools gladly, he's a very likable guy who likes people, probably would actually be a great campaigner. The lifestyle change would be dramatic, and you would lose his voice on X, which I think is extraordinarily powerful, far more powerful than he ever was when he was on Fox television. All right, we're almost out of time here. Sean, let me ask you this. If there was one movie that our listeners could see this evening, one movie this weekend that you would recommend, it could be offbeat. It doesn't have to be current. It could be a classic, or it could be something new. What would you urge them to see?
Oh, wow. Well,
tough question.
It's an impossible question because there are so many great films out there. I think it depends on your mood, right? If you're looking for something like, I think if people are wanting some interesting conspiracy films, I'm thinking like 3 Days of the Condor, right?
Excellent.
Or there we go. Watch 3 Days of the Condor. Go back to the 70s, right? To that classic paranoid conspiracy era when they were doing conspiracy movies, quite openly. I think that's what we need more of, is to realize conspiracy is reality. As you know, it's not just conspiracy theories; it's conspiracy reality.
Excellent choice. I'm going to write that down. All right, folks, I'm sorry that we are out of town. Let me thank my guest, Sean Stone, for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.